Welcome to the Straightway Through with Gina podcast, the podcast where we say it straight, we say it kind, and we say it true to the best of our ability every time. This podcast is all about communication, different aspects each time. Today's guest has chosen a very special topic, which I will introduce soon, but first, a prayer. Father God, we thank you for everything that you provide for us. I ask you to come through in this podcast in whatever way you decide is best for myself, for my guest share, and for the listeners. I ask that you help me to phrase my questions in a way that always honors and guides people to the truth within them, to your truth, and to a life that helps them with communication. So many people are suffering in relationships, whether it's just everyday relationships at work, with family members, with coworkers, with neighbors, or it's long-term communication issues, even in their own mind. How do we communicate with ourselves in a way that produces ease and a purpose and joy in our lives? So I ask that you come through in whatever way is most giving you glory and you praise, and whatever is most helpful to our listeners. I thank you and pray in Jesus Christ. Amen. Sherri, it's so awesome to have you here. We've been talking about this. And you have chosen a topic which I have never heard of before. I'm not even sure if it's a thing or if it's just your thing, but I'm excited to hear more about it. You said the topic of choice for you is the physics of communication.
Correct.
Okay, please share something about that with me.
I have to start by saying that pretty much my entire life, growing up with my identical twin sister, she's 2 minutes older. She's never let me forget that. Our brains have not only developed in sync as our bodies did when we were still inside our mom, but we have the same interests in science, in literature, in art, in a host of things. And when you think about the relationship among all of those, it becomes more easy to see the relationship that there is between physics and communication.
Mm.
When I was in high school, I learned that in order for sound to occur, there needs to be something to make the sound, something to receive the sound, and the medium through which it travels. You might remember the tagline for the movie Alien when it came out in the 1970s was, "In space, no one can hear you scream." Okay, because you're making that sound, there's nothing through which it can travel. Underwater, we know that sound travels differently. We know that there's a divine order to things if you look at how many times the Fibonacci sequence appears in nature. Why not with communication?
Mm.
We
All right,
differentiate.
let's wait. You said so many things in there. All right, hold on. So we got to go piece by piece here. So first, let's go
Okay.
back to you being a twin.
Yes.
That's amazing. You spent 9 months, maybe I'm guessing 9 months. I don't know, maybe it was less, but 9 months next to your sister.
Yep.
And surely there must have been communication going on, even though it wasn't verbal.
Oh, I would certainly imagine that to be the case. I don't have a recollection of that time,
Right?
though throughout our lives, we've had a sort of shorthand that as we started to get older, we learned that communicating with other people was not the same as communicating with one another. Our
Mm.
friends can't read our minds.
Mm.
Not that we were exactly reading one another's minds, but with similar neural pathways. Um, we both, for some reason, had to read the same book at the same time, and one of us would look at where the bookmark was and say, "Wait, I don't remember that," because we were
Mm.
hopscotching each other through the book.
Mm.
Until my grandmother put the kibosh on that and said, "You two have to read. You read it, then you read it, and then switch." But communication has been something that my sister and I have both been fascinated by because we were probably in elementary school when we realized that we needed to speak differently to other people than we
Hmm.
did to one another.
Wow, this is fascinating. I do want to get to the other things you said, but we have to stay here for a little while.
Sure, you bet.
This how can you explain? I know sometimes it's hard when you're on the inside, but what's the difference? How do you communicate differently with your sister than you do with the rest of the world? What do you two have that doesn't transfer over to other relationships?
One of the things that I would say is there's a different level of expectation that we've learned to have. And that's stood both of us very well in career and in personal relationships. Because the notion that we're fed from the time that we're small, that everyone who is meant to be in your sphere, meant to be in your life, is going to understand you instantly. When, as people who pass for grown-ups, we know that relationships require work. Relationships with family, relationships with friends, relationships, any kind of love relationship, family, friendship, romantic love, it takes a level of communication that most people are not prepared for, with actually no apologies to Harlequin books or Hallmark television shows or movies. Things don't just always fall into place.
Almost never.
Yeah.
So are you saying that communication with your sister is easier? It comes more naturally? It does fall into place? Or do you feel like you still have to really work at it with her too?
It fell into place more easily when we were younger and living in the same state.
Mm,
There are times now, my sister's been living in California for 10 or 11 years and had been living where we grew up in Florida prior to that. I had moved up to New Jersey. I've been here since 1992 and moved to Philly in 87. But we had also spent some time in high school in Philly. The greater the distance between us, the greater the challenge in communication. But because of the basis that we established when we were children, it's less to overcome than with friends that I've met later.
mhm.
Although there are some of my dearest friends who just kind of snapped into place.
Mm. That's really interesting about your sister and the fact that you were able to communicate better when you were geographically closer or easier. We'll say communicate easier. And then distance between you geographically created a little bit more challenge with communication, even though it's still easier than with non sibling friendships.
Partly because we weren't spending as much time socially together
Mm.
as lives develop in their own branches.
It's really interesting that you say that. We're both Toastmasters.
Mhm.
And one of the key components of a healthy Toastmasters club is fellowship. It's something that comes up over and over, and it's something that Toastmasters puts forth as a means to build your club. Fellowship in between meetings, not just meetings, but variety, fellowship, communication, getting together, doing things. And like you said, socially, I wonder how much doing things socially with another person helps your communication. Meaning inadvertently, not that you're there at that social event to communicate, but just doing more social activities puts you in a better space to be communicating better with each other. What do you think?
Oh, I would certainly say that's the truth. Uh,
Hmm.
my, well, first, I want to preface this by saying that because we're grown-ups and we're not in second grade, you can have more than one best friend.
Hmm.
And it's lucky if there's someone that you can call at 2 a.m. to say, I need this.
Mm-hmm.
I have extremely good fortune in that I have several of those type friends.
Aw, that's awesome.
It's the treasure of my heart, if you
Mm.
want to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
My bestie, Ron, who moved from New Jersey when he retired back to the Tampa, Florida area where he was born and raised because his family is there. He and I first bonded over wordplay and enjoying listening to classical music that some people don't find to their taste.
Mm.
Now, we both love classical, Brahms, Chopin, Vivaldi, Handel, all of the ones that you think of with classical music. But contemporary classical is a love that we both share. Philip Glass, Steve Reich, and some folks who enjoy classical music do not consider those to be classical. And he and I both love those. We have far reaching conversations about art, about science, about literature, science fiction, which is both. And his brain is something that I really admire. And so when I look at friends, when I look at you, when I look at our other Toastmasters, it's not um, a sense of vibration, even. It's brainwaves that I'm
Mm.
looking for. And that takes us back to physics again.
Mm-hmm. Which we are going to get to.
I know,
I
I'm
know.
just trying to spin out the threads there.
That's right. That's right. Weave it all together. Yeah,
Yep.
that social piece, that social piece. I think what it reflects in me, which is interesting, is that if we could spend more time socializing with people that we don't have particularly good communication with, it might help the communication. So instead of saying, hey, our communication is breaking down, there's a problem, let's sit down and talk about it, maybe it should be, let's go do something that we both enjoy.
Let's remember who we are together
Mm-hmm.
and what brought us all together in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those common interests, going out, having a social. And I think about that too, even with Toastmasters in our club, when we get together for the formal meetings, it's nice and we get a lot accomplished, but it's in those pizza parties and the things in between the meetings. We've gotten together to go to a park and we've gotten together to swim, except it was too cold, so no one went in the pool. But things like that where we get together, it does create a better place for our community. It's almost like it creates the space for our current and future communications to fill. So I like how this has taken on a new meaning in my mind about what to do when we're in trouble with communication in a relationship. Maybe the key or one of the keys is to go out and socialize. So thanks for bringing that to the forefront today. I already consider that a gem from our conversation, and I'm sure there's going to be more, but that's a really valuable one.
Well,
Now,
if you
uh-huh. Go ahead.
not regress, but sometimes if you think about back in the old days when we used to navigate with maps,
Mhm.
my favorite maps when I first moved to New Jersey were the ones from the middle of the phone book. I would rip them out and leave them in my car so that I could navigate. Let's insert a rocking chair here and talk to people who only ever navigate on their phone. There are these flat
Mhm.
things, two dimensional, and they're called maps. And off on the edges here be monsters, but in the middle, it's New Jersey.
Mhm.
While we're navigating with that, sometimes we don't go far enough. If we had just gone a block further, we would have seen the place that we're looking for. Or we took a wrong turn and we didn't realize where we did that. Consequently, communication is the same way. If we go back to where we knew who we were together or what we were talking about, then we can figure out where we got off the path.
Mm.
Or if we continue speaking with rules
Mhm.
for just a little bit longer, then maybe we'll arrive where we're meant to be.
Mhm. Yeah. But both of those, going forward, going back, they both speak about not going head on for the miscommunication.
Right.
And I think that's what we usually do. We usually say, here's the breakdown, let's focus on this here. But what we're
Right.
talking about is going back here, forward, back, whichever direction we go in, but
Right.
recalibrating the relationship at a different place, so that then communication seems natural, like it did once upon a time with your sister.
Right.
Right? Where there really didn't even have to be effort. It was just a very natural back and forth.
And it does take a little time when we spend time together to settle back into our way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the patterning of nature, and
Mm-hmm.
you spoke about the Fibonacci series. I look for patterns all the time when I'm out and I'm taking pictures, because I love taking pictures, and I love flowers, and I love insects, and
Mm-hmm.
I love the animals, and I love all of the things that I find outside.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm always noticing, I won't say that I'm looking for it because it's not a conscious pursuit, but I'm always noticing the patterns. And I don't mean necessarily the physical patterns,
Right.
or something like the fractals, I guess we could call them, but I'm more noticing the behavioral patterns, the seasonal patterns, the flying patterns. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for example, when I'm photographing a dragonfly, that
Mm-hmm.
dragonfly, I know its patterns, which is why I'm able to photograph it the way I know. When it takes off, how it's going to come back, how long it's going to
Right.
take for it to come back. Right? Those are all patterns. And so the natural world, it operates in patterns, and people operate in patterns too. And I think that if we spend some time getting to understand those patterns, or even just noticing those patterns, which most people don't tune into, it gives us so much more to help and develop and go deeper with communication, as opposed to just staying on the surface level. And again, coming to that piece here where it seems like the communication is breaking down, but going like underneath it, back this way, on top of it, below it. There's all this stuff around that breakdown that if we spend a little bit of time exploring, it could really change this thing in the center that seems to be the problem.
I'm going to make a suggestion.
Yeah.
Rather than if we do this, what if we say when we do this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's more active and it gives a time basis to the action that's going to occur. When we do this,
Mm-hmm.
my experience is that this is the result.
Right. That's
Because
right.
then if it's experiential, it's hard to argue
Mm-hmm.
with someone when you pay attention. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the crux of the problem as well. There's a lot of noise all around everything. How do you get to what is essential in a
Mm-hmm.
thread?
Mm-hmm. And even this, even what we're talking about right now. So when you differentiate between the if and the when, right? It's like
Hmm.
even that in terms of communication. So when you say that, what it causes me to think of is when I say if, like when I say things, usually there's a reason. It doesn't mean that there can't be a better reason to say something else. But when I say if, it's because I find that so many of, whether it's me or other people, so many of us feel like there's a certain way to do things. And when I say if, I feel like I'm giving an invitation to walk out of that routine, an invitation to walk out of what we would normally go to. Because if I say when we do this, then it might cause somebody that's really rooted in the conditioned to say, well, I don't do that, I do this. But it's like if you step out of that conditioning, and I'm not saying like when is fabulous. I love when, I love that reframe. But just to understand that when I say if, it's not because I wouldn't take action on it, or that I'm not recommending that someone take action on it. It's because it feels like it's a little bit of a softer invite for someone who's used to staying here at the level of the problem. Does that make sense? And the
Sure.
reason I share that is because these are the kinds of conversations that I like, because we're communicating, you and I, and it opens us up to understand one another more, I think, if we talk about those little things right? Like when you hear if and when I say if, it feels like it means something different. And I think
It
it's like
does.
that in all of communication. Yeah.
100%. Partly because I know I have stopped saying try.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try
That's
to
so
do
good.
that. I don't say
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
because I know that when my brain tells my mouth to say try, not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I know that when I say I'm going to work toward that, that I am 2/3 of the way to accomplishing whatever it is I'm working toward
Mm-hmm.
for me. But absolutely, if is a prospective place where things can live. And
Yeah,
it depends certainly on who you're speaking with.
that's right.
When we spoke about being Toastmasters before, and I love evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to hear the music in their speech and understand what makes someone a more impactful speaker by using pause, by using dynamic variation in vocal variety, as well as tonal variation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a musician and you think of your favorite version of a song and the versions other people have done, let me just give you an example. Um, if you've heard the version of Mad World by Tears for Fears, they're the ones who invented the song. It's almost like a march. But if you look at the version that they did in Riverdale, it's much slower, more introspective, and it feels like an entirely different song. Or for people who aren't 80s and 2010s oriented, if you think of Derek and the Dominoes version of Layla, where it was this driving anthem kind of song, versus what Clapton remade, where it's a plaintive call. Completely different song. Same song, different song.
Mm-hmm. Communicating differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that definitely fits in with vocal variety, tone, how you use your voice. And a lot of times it's subtle. And what I love about all of this, whether it's communication or it's tone or it's vocal variety, is you have to develop the ears to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll miss it otherwise. But if you're someone who is
Right.
listening for those little tiny nuances in tone and vocal variety, and if you can pick them up and you can realize that how that impacts a person who's speaking and a person who's receiving the speech. Okay, let's go back now to what you said about when you were in high school. There was the sound and there was the thing that the sound moved up against and the
Right.
medium of which it traveled in between.
Right.
And that's what is that what you call the physics of communication, or is the physics of communication this thing that people know about?
I don't know if anyone else has articulated it that way. I don't know that I'm an inventor of things. I always feel that inventors are more discoverers under any
Mm-hmm.
circumstance, because if
Mm-hmm.
something exists in the world, it's there for us to discover, but we didn't invent it.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the idea that understanding there are things that generate sound,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes a sound and fury signifying nothing. And then there's something that will receive whatever sound is being made. How it travels is essentially a filter that will affect our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
If you send words through a hydrophone through water and receive it, think of when you're kids and you're having fun and you're splashing. When you are underwater, it sounds different. And th- things that are generating sound above the water sound different to you through that medium that it's traveling for you to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we speak of there's the auditory piece of that, just the physical sound waves traveling, generation sound waves receiving. There's the nuanced aspect of it that is the filtering that goes on. And the filtering here is sometimes where the problem is. And that has to do with past experience or past trauma. So sometimes what I'm hearing from someone who is new in my life triggers something for me that happened in a different part of my life. And then can I task this person with the burden of helping me dissolve that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can, maybe I can't. But unless you have a different view or a level of self-awareness where you can say, these are my patterns.
Mm-hmm.
These are the patterns of my internal nature, not Mother Nature.
It's what it all comes down to, Cher.
Yeah.
It's we're operating from this internal stuff always, but we're saying it's the external stuff. So you said a lot. We could go in so many directions with what you just said, but I would like to focus on two things if I can remember them both. One is if we're talking about the sender, the receiver, and the space in between, when we talk about communication, it's really that any one of those three things could go wrong. Not wrong. I don't want to say wrong, that there's a right or a wrong, but meaning the issue could be coming from the sender, it could be coming from the receiver, it could be coming from the thing in between. And I don't know what that thing is, what we would call that thing right now. I guess we would call it the air, because we're not underwater talking, but that thing that's getting my voice to your ears. So me, the sender right now, you're the receiver, there's a microphone in me, but all the physics in between us is probably stuff that we know and that we don't know. So there's that piece to it. And going back, because I always like to focus on the relational thing. So we have this if then thing going on, right? So I say if, you say when or then, or it was when, right? So when we do this as opposed to if we do this. It's like, this is a perfect example of what you just said about the internal stuff, right? What if means to me means something different to you. And so when I say if and you hear if, already we're communicating in Cher's language and Gina's language, but those two languages are missing each other.
Right.
At least that's what it feels like to me, right? That's what my analytical skills tell me. Your analytical skills could tell you something other than that, and that would be fine too. But I just think that's so interesting, because what it shows us here is that this internal stuff is huge. And we can't expect that the receiver knows anything about this internal stuff. And what you said is, I don't know if I can give the burden, that person the burden, but I also think of it as an invite. You know what I mean? Like, this is how I see things. If I find somebody in life who has some internal stuff going on and they want to share about that stuff or bring that stuff up, I feel actually like it's a gift to be able to help them process that, even if I've had nothing to do with the creating of it.
But we can't expect them.
We cannot.
To help us dismantle how we're feeling about what they've said. And if I don't say, there's a metaphysics aspect. Because if I'm looking at myself and saying, wow, I'm hearing the words are not something that should make anyone angry, but I'm having a real reaction to it. So I'm looking down at myself and saying, or up at myself, saying, what is it that is affecting me in this way about what this person is saying? And is it my challenge that when we were first becoming friends and they said this, I didn't ask about it or I didn't talk about it. So now we've gone along with this person thinking we're on this path and me thinking we're on this path. And there are some times where what I call it is the pokey parts of our personalities are in the same place. But once we sort things out, then we figure out the ways where we align. there are some folks who are still in the camp that we can agree about 2/3 of things,
Mm-hmm.
and there's going to be some things that we're just never going to agree on, but that doesn't make you less my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And the really sad part for me over the past several years is there are people who are so vehemently certain that their way is the right way that we can't even agree on the things we agree on anymore
Mm.
because there's no air left in the room from the things where we don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
that's
that is it no air, or is it that there's anger, frustration, irritation, which affects all the things that you do agree on?
too many pokey parts. We can't get to the summit because we have to get through the slough of despond, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, all of these factors come into communication, and you mentioned that in the beginning of a relationship, you hear something and you say, "Oh, it means this," and then later find out it means something else.
Right.
It's like in those we hear to some degree what we want to hear. We fill it in. We fill it in.
Sure.
Somebody says something and then we fill that in to mean what it means to us instead of understanding what it means to them.
Hmm.
Because we have so many wishes. That's what I find as humans. We have so many wishes, and the wish comes before the expectation. The wish is, I wish I had a person who understood me, or I wish I had a person who saw me. We all have those wishes. That's kind of like
Hmm.
part of human nature. And so when we hear somebody say something that sounds like it might possibly meet that wish, we jump all over that and think that it is a meeting of that wish, to then find out 3 months later it was never a meeting of that wish. Right? So like where this conversation has gone, which I think every conversation has to go if it's a real conversation and you're looking at real things, is that there's so much underlying all of these communications, which is our stuff, and it's for us to figure out. So when somebody says something, I think it's so great to have the space to ask them what they mean. And I know that's really hard because we don't think that we don't know what they mean. So like when let's say you say something right now, I think I know what you mean. Why would I ask you what you mean? I think I know what you mean. Right. But if I don't assume that I know what you mean and we talk a little bit more about it, I might come to understand it more. And if I'm really aware of what my wishes are, like let's just say I have a wish for this to be a great podcast episode. If that's my wish, that's going to overshadow and overlay everything.
Right.
But if I look at that wish and I say, I'm here for however this goes, it might be a great episode, it might be the greatest episode, it might not even record.
Might be less great.
Yeah, it might be less great, which is great too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's all the whole spectrum. The whole spectrum is truly great, but maybe it wasn't the right word to use great, but maybe I say if I wanted this podcast to go smooth. How about that? That's a good one.
Smoothly.
Smooth,
Yeah.
right? And then
Right.
it was rocky, and then I was upset that it wasn't smooth. It's like, no, I'm here for it to be smooth. I'm here for it to be rocky. It's like whatever it is, it is.
Exactly. And what if, well, I'm just going to say that often with a performance, we're not always the best judge from the inside. There might be, and there have been things where I felt like I gave my best effort, but it wasn't the best I had ever done that particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
And people loved it because
Aw,
my
yeah.
expectation was
Right.
different from what their expectation was.
Exactly.
So another piece of it is give yourself a break.
Oh, thanks. I will. I
And
I
both
I love that.
in the individual and the broader sense.
Yeah.
Don't be
Right.
your own harshest critic,
Right.
but make sure that every time you're doing something,
Mhm.
or I can't put it on anyone else, I work really hard when I'm doing something to make sure that it is the best I am capable of in that moment,
Right. Mhm. And that's
which is
that's the best.
that's something that the finalists in the World Championship of Public Speaking are going to be facing in a couple
That's
weeks.
right. Wow. I can't wait to see that. Yeah, they really are. They really are at the top of their game.
Yes.
Very, very, very good. All right. The last thing, Cher, is you mentioned the sender, the receiver, and the medium. And the receiver is an important piece to this. And while we've talked a lot about the one who's sending, yes, they have their own stuff. They've got to look at their own stuff. The thing that it travels through, we know things, we don't know things about that. Some of that is beyond our control. But the receiver, when we communicate, if we're communicating with someone, how much of our responsibility do you think it is for us to follow up and see what communication they actually got? So meaning, if I say to you, hey, Cher, let's meet for lunch tomorrow at 12 o'clock, how much is the responsibility mine to make sure that you received that communication as opposed to me just assuming you did because I sent it?
Mm. I spent a fair amount of my career up to this point doing training, both as an actual trainer, a contract trainer, internal trainer for everything from sales training to technical training. And the key part of teaching anybody anything is the feedback loop. And what it looks like is not a circle, it's an infinity loop where we are continually working to show someone by our response to them that we've listened to them, we've begun to digest what they're saying, and that we are sending it back to them in our interpretation so that they can say, yes, that's what I meant, or no, that's not what I was thinking. Which means we need to not just hear people, we need to listen to people, attend to what they're saying and how they say it. If you're working with someone who is deaf or hard of hearing and you're working with them with sign language, your face is key to the grammar of what you're trying to say, to the intent of what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
why not so with other parts of communication, with our words? We use our tone of voice to add warmth and color or anger or distress.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm thinking about a recent situation last week or the week before. I had mentioned to someone we had met at a park and we were going to go for a walk, but we decided at the last minute to get food first.
Mhm,
And for whatever reason, won't go into it, but we were going to take two cars.
mhm,
And I said, okay, let's meet at this place. And it was Whole Foods, and there's two Whole Foods within this area. It's about a 1 mile, they're about a 1 mile distance from each other.
mhm.
And I very clearly named the Whole Foods. I said, make sure it's that Whole Foods because that's the one with food, meaning food that you can get at a at a
Hot
food
food,
bar.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And when I got there, my friend had texted me and said, I'm here. And I said, okay, where are you? And she told me she was at the other Whole Foods. And I maybe in the past would have been upset with her, but this time I
Yeah,
wasn't upset at all because what I said to myself was, sure, I said it, but did I check to make sure that she heard me? Like, who knows what she was
right.
thinking of while I said that? Who knows what was on her mind while I said that? So, I think that's one of the best things about getting older is that we get more mild mannered with these things. And for me, the beauty is, even though it can feel a little heavy at times. The beauty really is in continuing to take more and more and more responsibility. Whereas maybe at one point I would try to put the responsibility on someone else. Like, well, weren't you listening? Or how come you didn't ask me? Or they didn't, right? So the responsibility is mine. So there was no upset because I took the responsibility and said, well, now I know for next time, follow that up with which one are we meeting at? Right. And that helps me in other areas of my life too. So even though it's easy to think of it in a professional setting only, I think in our personal relationships too, it's worthwhile for us to see what the receiver is receiving instead of just getting mad at them for not receiving.
It's kind of you to attribute that to getting older. There's some brain research that would suggest that, but not everybody who has the good fortune to live a long time gets to that wisdom piece.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And that other person may have been more hungry than you and not processing information.
No, she wasn't hungry at all. She wasn't even going to eat. I was the one eating. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So yeah. but again, it just goes to show that where we want to put the blame on others, I mean, where the tendency to put the blame on others is, I just think it's so valuable it's not about putting the blame on us. It's blame no one, right? Blame doesn't do anything but take responsibility for it. So I take responsibility for that. Okay, it went the way it went. Laugh about it and learn something and move on.
Right. Then get back to the park and take that walk.
That's right. Exactly. Now, Sherri, is there anything else? Do you want to say anything more about the physics of communication? Because I know we went in a lot of different places and we didn't so much stay focused on that topic. But is there any burning desire in you to talk about the physics of communication that we haven't touched on?
I feel like we did justice to the idea because there should always be further conversations that come from the nucleus of what we've spoken about today.
Absolutely. I hope so. I hope you'll come back on in 6 months and talk about the physics of communication part 2, because we can go a little bit deeper. We can expand on what we started with today. And not to mention that, but we'll both be 6 months worth of different people by then.
Excellent point. Excellent point. I will only have more to say about it, I'm certain.
Right, because when we bring up this topic like we did today, you know that we'll be thinking about, our reflections will continue in terms
Cogito
of
ergo
right?
sum. Yeah.
What'd you say?
Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
So we will keep thinking about this, and I'm sure we'll have more to reflect on. So I want to thank you for being a guest on today's show.
My pleasure.
I hope that it brings you benefit, that it brings you fruits in your life, that it causes something in your communication world to shift in a good way. Not to say that it needs a good shift, but I feel like just humans in general, communication, it's always growing and expanding. And wouldn't it be nice to have that kind of communication that you had with your sister at a young age, with more people at this age, even with strangers?
That's the plan.
Yeah.
That's the plan. I find when I lead with kindness in my work at the Edison Public Library, that good things happen.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm sure there's a lot of happy patrons that leave after you've treated them with kindness.
I hope so. I will never know, and that's okay, as long as they have a good experience.
That's right. Well, thank you for being part of the show, and I'm going to look forward to having you back in 6 months.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here today for Straightway Through with Gina, a podcast where we say it straight, we say it true, we say it with kindness every time to the best of our ability. If something hit home today, pass it on, share it, like, subscribe, join the community. If it's time to say it straight to yourself, I have a daily journal prompt delivery system that gets you one journal prompt each day in your inbox so that you can get to know yourself more deeply and start saying it straight every day. Because when you say it straight to yourself, you can say it straight to others. I'll leave the link for that community in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Until next time.